so much, Jerica. What a great job. This is amazing, amazing turnout. This is the biggest Clinton County Republican event in the 10 years that I've been coming to them, so I know it's a tremendous amount of work, and we are very, very grateful for that. I want to thank all of you for taking time on this Friday evening. I know there's a lot going on with families in the community, so thank you for being so engaged in the process. 33 days until the most important election in our lifetime. And I know we say that every 2 years, but this one really is, and I see a lot of heads nodding. No matter where I go in my district or who I talk to across the country, people understand that the stakes are so high this election cycle. Who we are as a country, the state of the world is all on the ballot, and it is up to we the people. The American people are going to save this country by electing President Trump to the White House. Just look at what has happened on Joe Biden and Kamala Harris's watch. Let's start with the border crisis. Earlier today, I was visiting with some of the property owners, local elected officials, including folks who are here today from Clinton and Franklin counties, hearing firsthand the impact of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris's catastrophic border policies. And I know we have Border Patrol officers here tonight. First of all, we thank our Border Patrol officers for their incredible work every single day. I know my friend Tom Homan is going to talk about this because there's no better experts and no better advocate working with President Trump when it comes to securing our nation's border. But I want to tell you some of the stories that we heard, that you are familiar with, that have been happening in this community. There has been a 50 times increase since Joe Biden has taken office of illegals crossing the Swanton sector, including individuals who are on the terrorist watch list. We heard from families firsthand about dropping their kids off for the first week of school and having illegals right outside of their local elementary school. We heard from families who have seen dozens and dozens of illegals on their deer camps, on their trail camps, and they would call Border Patrol, and Border Patrol would do incredible work responding, but think about the numbers that we have not even counted through Department of Homeland Security that are just getting through. This is a catastrophic crisis, and it started on day one of Joe Biden taking the Oval Office. He issued 94 executive orders wiping away the effective border security policies of President Trump. And make no mistake, with the stroke of a pen, he could have at any point returned to those effective policies. And Kamala Harris is Joe Biden's open border czar. She owns this catastrophe. She hasn't even been to the border, never really to the border until just 2 weeks ago. It is a disgrace. Every member of the House Republican Conference has been to the border because we know that every district across the country is a border district. Every state is a border state, which is why House Republicans passed the Secure the Border Act. Not a single Democrat voted for it, and Chuck Schumer has failed to bring that up in the U.S. Senate. We will flip the Senate Republican, and with President Trump in the White House, we will pass the Secure the Border Act, get that signed into law, build the wall, and catch and release, restore remain in Mexico, and support our Border Patrol officers. And I want to thank, just on the border issue, before I talk about the other issues, I want to thank so many of our local families and small businesses who have shared their personal stories, their experiences. Going back to the first year of Joe Biden's administration, we led the effort sounding the alarm on the northern border crisis when we heard from Border Patrol officers who had been transferred to the southern border, leaving us without the resources that we need. Thank you for the families for putting this front and center. We have worked to send up national media to cover this, and we are going to make sure that the northern border is not forgotten on day one of President Trump's next administration. In addition to the border crisis, we have an economic crisis. Inflation is Americans are struggling to make ends meet. You go to the grocery store, you see the skyrocketing of prices, whether it's eggs, whether it's bacon, whether it's diapers, whether it's bread, it goes up and up, whether it's cereal. People are absolutely shocked with this historic inflation. And the person who owns this inflation, Kamala Harris, cast the deciding vote for the Inflation Expansion Act. That was the $1 trillion of reckless spending, of Green New scam priorities, taking your hard-earned taxpayer dollars, actually further racking up our debt to communist China and fueling this inflation crisis. She owns this, and we're going to hold her accountable. Think back to 4 years ago. We had the strongest economy in our lifetime. We had a manufacturing boom. We had the largest number of individuals in the workforce, the highest wage and salary growth in modern history. We had the greatest economic comeback and growth that our country has ever seen in this century, and that has been crushed by the failed policies of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. And we feel the double whammy in New York because we have those horrific tax and spend policies coming out of Albany that Dan Sneck referenced. You know, we will have a very important vote next year. The tax cuts that Trump passed, some of those are set to expire. And you know what Kamala Harris, she wants to let those expire and increase everyone's taxes. It would be the largest tax increase in our nation's history. Trillions of dollars of new taxes. And here you have President Trump, who has promised to cut our taxes, which we will, who says no tax on tips. Everybody likes that. No tax on Social Security to support our seniors. In fact, those ideas are so good, no tax on tips, that you know who tried to steal it? Kamala Harris. But we know that President Trump is the only one who will get that done with House Republicans, because we will never vote to raise your taxes. We will always vote to cut your taxes and rein in this reckless inflation. On top of the border and the inflation crisis, look what's happening around the world. It is chaos and catastrophe with a weakened national security, with a fecklessly weak commander-in-chief who's mentally incapacitated, and Kamala Harris has known that for the past almost 4 years. Let's go back to the catastrophic withdrawal from Afghanistan. That is a very dark chapter, a black mark on American foreign policy forever. And it is because of Joe Biden's failure to protect our national security interests, and most importantly, his failure to protect our men and women in uniform. And the last person in the room advising Joe Biden to do that catastrophic withdrawal was Kamala Harris. And this has an impact in every district across the country, but especially this district. You all know this. We are home to Fort Drum, the most deployed division in the U.S. Army since 9/11. Many of them were there in Afghanistan, were some of our last troops who were withdrawn to come home. They have testified that they didn't have the resources nor the support from Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. And God bless those 13 service members who lost their lives. That should have never happened. I've met with those 13 Gold Star families. President Trump has met with those Gold Star families. You know who has not talked to or met with those Gold Star families? Neither Joe Biden nor Kamala Harris. It is a disgrace. We need a commander-in-chief who supports our men in uniform, who stands for peace through strength, and who brings deterrence to the office and to our national security. And it wasn't just the catastrophic withdrawal from Afghanistan. The rest of the world saw that. You had Putin invading Ukraine, and then last October 7th, you have the Iranian-backed Hamas attack against our most precious ally, Israel, leading to the bloodiest day since the Holocaust for the Jewish people. And what did Joe Biden do? He turned his back on our allies and continued to appease Iran. And today's Democrat Party is not our parents' or our grandparents' Democrat Party. It is so far radical left. Just look at our universities. Did any of you see that university president's hearing? Some of you did. What we saw on our college campuses was a skyrocketing of anti-Semitism and a moral bankruptcy of our supposed elite university presidents, intellectual left. They are so radicalized that they show the world. It is now the most viewed testimony in the history of the United States Congress. Their answer to my very straightforward moral question, does calling for the genocide of Jews violate your university's code of conduct? I always say, my district, my constituents know that that answer is an unequivocal yes. No matter you talk to a small business, a manufacturing worker, a mom, we know how to answer that question. It was a disgrace that you have the presidents from MIT, Penn, and Harvard say, it depends on the context. There is a reason they're former presidents. They have been fired, and there are so many to go. Rely on billions of taxpayer dollars, and they are becoming and embracing this anti-Americanism that is now part of the radical Democrat Party. So I talked about the border crisis, I talked about the economic crisis, talked about the national security crisis. We also have a crime crisis. Dan Steck touched upon this skyrocketing of crime that we're experiencing across the country, but particularly in New York State. You have a failed, abysmal governor in Kathy Hochul, who, by the way, we will fire in 2 years. She has turned her back on our law enforcement with failed bail reform, releasing violent criminals onto our streets over and over again, and it's not just impacting big cities. We know it's impacting the suburbs and rural communities as well, including in upstate New York and the North Country. We also have a governor who has turned her back on our correctional officers. We know how important our corrections officers are to this community, to this state, and again, we will hold Kathy Hochul accountable in 2 years' time. That's why voting Republican is so important to send the message. Now, there's a bright spot. There's a lot of bright spots in New York State. As you know, I'm a proud born and raised native New Yorker from upstate, and we would not have the House Republican majority were it not for New Yorkers. We flipped 5 seats. We fired Nancy Pelosi once and for all, delivering that Republican majority. And I gotta tell you, National Democrats, they are focused on trying to win back those 5 districts. They're going to spend $100 million on just 5 House races in New York to try to flip them from Republican to Democrat. We are working very hard to support all of my Republican colleagues in the New York delegation and across the country so that we have a Republican Congress ready on day 1 to work with a Republican Senate, which we will flip when we fire Chuck Schumer as the majority leader of the U.S. Senate. The good news is, 10 years later, after we used to be considered a swing district, we are now Trump and Elise country up here, Republican up and down the ballot. That is thanks to you. And Clinton County, I have a big challenge for you. We have seen these changes in New York State. We have seen us winning more and more support for Republican candidates. Clinton County is one of the few counties that in the past few years, in some cases, the county has voted Democrat. I have a challenge for you. I think that this election day, in 33 days, this will be a red county. It will vote for Trump. It will vote for Republicans up and down the ticket. So I am asking all of you to build on this enthusiasm to make sure that Clinton County is red on election day. Because we